Hello everyone, and welcome to an episode of Showcase on Dark Souls Remaster. Now it's been a couple days, but let's move on to the next weapon. I want to cover the Halbert. The plain one, that is. A long-hilted weapon, mixing a spear and an axe, is difficult to handle, requiring both strength and dexterity. The Halbert is a two elementary attacks, a spear-like thrust, and large sweeping attacks, or sweeping swings. However, one false swing and the wielder can be left wide open. So yes, pretty said plainly for Halbert. I don't think you can water down that commentary any more than it could be. But anyway, I want to do the Halbert first so I can compare it to the other Halberts going forward. Now, visually, the Halbert is just that, a Halbert. A German-made weapon that rose at its height to the 14th, 15th century. Even whole armies like the Swedish army back then being equipped mainly with Halberts, as they kind of, circumvented the spear and lance, or even pike, if you will. Because having two weapons is better than one, and why not have it on the same weapon? It's a good sound strategy, where you can plant on the ground, stop cavalry, and if someone's coming at you with a shorter weapon, beat them over the effing head with the axe portion. Or even flip it around to puncture the armor. There are countless versions of the Halbert. But yes, it's arguably say they're the most primary weapon during back medieval times, in the late medieval times anyway, before the gun became more prominent and, forced every melee weapon into the back seat, into a defensive position. Anyway, moving on to the animations for the Halbert. Now your attack, your basic one, is a spear jab, though your character seems to be having a hard time wielding it. In fact, I guess he said you can see his footwork needs a lot of work. Needs a bit more skill, but that's the animations for the Halbert. Even if you look at Dark Souls 3, they're freaking weird. They're unnatural a bit, like your character hasn't been properly trained very well. But no matter, you can see the various power attacks with the axe, stabbing with blade attacks, so that's pretty much a quick rundown of this. Your basic light attacks is spear jabs, your power attacks is axe swings. And you can see the sprint attacks mainly incorporate the axe portion, and same thing goes for your step back and rolling attacks. But even two-handed, you can see that your character has not handled the weapon very well. He's behaving like it's heavier than it actually is. I get it that the Halbert would be heavy on the end, but your character, people get trained, people learn how to confiscate for that and learn to handle it. And of all weapons in Dark Souls, our characters generally handle every weapon quite very well, even unrealistically sized ones. So having a Halbert and your character swinging around so awkwardly is a bit jarring in the eyes. But as you can see, it's not the fastest weapon, and there's also problems when it comes to the axe heads. At least with the animations. As much as a nice wide swing, and you get multiple opponents, or even a larger opponent multiple times, in such tight, confined quarters, say, as this tunnel, which doesn't exactly leave a lot of room to maneuver an axe-like weapon. And you got these enemies here that refuse to come to the tunnel and demonstrate a proper demo, so I'll kill them outside, and you can even see here that my attack is interrupted midway and I can only kill two of them, and I gotta repeat the action. Moving on from the animations, let's go to the stats for the Halbert. Now, attack type is actually thrust and regular, which we've seen. Now, damage-wise, it is 110, which is a little bit above most other weapons, so just slightly. Bonus is more than satisfactory for my stats. At 80 plus 84, that'll be upgraded. Now, on to the parameter bonus, we got a D for both strength and dexterity, as the weapon claimed will be pretty much equal in that, although it's not quite equal, but very close to that fact. Moving on, we see damage reduction hasn't had anything noteworthy, and required parameters, you need 16 strength and 12 dexterity, which is average. Most characters will achieve that easily. Durability is plain, and the weight is 6.0, which does put it in a bit of a slightly heavier category, but not too heavy. Which begs the question when your character swings it around. Again, I'm gonna bring that up. So yes, it's heavier than most spears, but in terms of other heavy weapons, it is quite light and easy to wield. Now, going on to the upgrades, we got the base upgrade here. Next up, we got the lightning upgrade, which is stronger than the base upgrade for once. Then we got the divine vault upgrade, which somewhere in a decent higher range. And then the occult, which is actually one of the higher and stronger ones, but only slightly beaten out by the magic, by only like a prefer only like a 3 damage, and then the enchantment being again on top, beating that out by 3 damage. So occult, magic, enchanted, almost all the same damage values. It'll change on who you're fighting. So you got fire there, you got chaos, and so well, it goes without saying I'll be using enchanting yet again. We're going with the overall damage in terms of strongest weapon, in terms of upgrades. And there's a raw, and let's move on. Okay, so using this weapon is a bit of a practice, because your character moves, albeit a bit slowly and a bit lumbering. As the description said, if you do miss, you'll be left wide open, because your character does stagger a bit with each strike. So when you do hit someone, you gotta make sure you actually hit them and don't undershoot it. Because as you can see here with the enemy, even though I hit him with the shaft of the weapon, he's dead, clearly. Now next question, can I go through his shield? Now, when I was testing against a shield, the enemies didn't feel like using them, so we'll just do an extra few enemies. And I figured let's do it all one run, one take. So you can see here that the enemy, it does go through the shield. But I wanted to test the more power attack, but of course the enemy doesn't really want to use his shield whenever I want him to use his shield. So as I said, we'll do a few extra targets because I don't think it's quite conclusive. But nonetheless, you can see a basic spear poke does go through a basic shield of the enemy. So that's pretty good for that. It's already busting through shields easily. No power attack needed. So yeah, and swing attack, you can see it's just a rough 300 damage, but it's actually 2 hits. And you can see the power attack does in fact go through, although a little bit less damage. Now, facing such a large opponent such as the Guardians of Analondo, it's actually very easy to kill an opponent with this thing. As you see, the spear jabs are more than quick enough, and the Halbert is actually a 2-hitting attack. And the Guardians of Analondo are a large hitbox. As long as you don't hit their shield, you'll get them in 2 hits. Easily. Although I didn't mean to mean him with the less than light spear, but it's simply how it happened. So, against large targets, it's actually an excellent weapon to use against them, as you'll have a hard time actually missing them. Against something like a Capra Demon, which is a lot more nimble, it's actually a bit more tricky. But you see there, the two hits actually staggers him. So this has some stagger potential against medium-sized enemies. Those do anything against large. Still, plenty of damage. More enough to do, say, your entire playthrough with. Because this is the 3rd playthrough and I'm cutting through enemies pretty easily. And against a humanoid opponent, as usual, Kirk, since no one wants to invade me, it really comes down what your opponent using and how nimble they are around the Halbert, because they're dodging 2 different types of attacks. You just gotta be careful and juggling between them, though most opponents will die easily if not properly guarded. Going on to the pros and cons of the Halbert. On the pros, you got a mixture of both animations for a spear and an axe. So, for the wide swing attacks and narrow jabs inside tight quarters I mentioned earlier. So yeah, that's pretty good. It also has a great reach for a wide swing, also wide swing attack, so plenty of different animations there to your advantage. And overall, it's a pretty competent weapon. Pretty well balanced too. Now on the cons, the animations could be better. Yeah. And given that it's an axe, wide swinging attacks do have problems in tight corridors, which I demonstrated and I mentioned too many times probably by this point. So yeah. Okay, moving on from that, we got the score. Now, for damage, I'm going to give it strictly a B. It was pretty good. Reach, I'm going to give it a B+, because you got nice jabs and wide swinging attacks. Animation, though, a C-. They're hard to look at, they're pretty, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you think about it in terms of context of Dark Souls. And, again, if you miss, you're going to be left wide open. Okay, moving on from that, we got scaling, and which are going to give a B+. So yeah, the scaling was actually pretty good to go across all the weapons altogether and all upgrades. And in Misk, I'm going to give it a B. So, it's pretty much an overall great weapon to use. No real reasons not to use it as long as you're competent with it and you know how to use it properly. So in total, I think the Halbert gets a standard B. It's fairly up for competent weapon. You can use it through a whole playthrough and not probably have too much trouble. In fact, you probably, in a lot of combat scenarios you might have the advantage even. So overall, the Halbert's an excellent weapon to use, although it's the unpopular choice in Dark Souls to my knowledge. I almost never see anyone using a Halbert. Even let alone even the plain Halbert at that. Well, there's always slightly better Halberts. So yeah, really competent, but not my weapon of choice. And probably not anyone else's either. And that's been Showcase for today. I'd like to thank you all for watching and hope to see you guys next time. Take care out there.